I wanted to just add a few thoughts concerning my video from yesterday at 2 South Park. And first of all, I want to make one thing clear. When I say that I believe that the brand of South Park has perhaps always been corporate, perhaps always been owned, perhaps always been controlled opposition, or maybe somewhere, maybe they started off authentic and somewhere along the way they somebody got to them, they got tapped on the shoulder, they got a text from the secretary of the Rothschild family where it said, okay guys, we enjoy your show, but enough is enough with mocking the leaders of the political system. Let's go in a little bit of a different direction, and let's have y'all uphold the sort of beliefs and opinions that we the opinion shapers and influencers want you to uphold from now on. Okay, lads. I don't know how it happened, or if it happened that way, or it probably happened in more subtle ways than that, but my sense is that it has indeed happened, and their take on the so-called pandemic and now their vaccination special just seems to prove that to me. But I want to make clear, when I say that I think a brand has sold out, or the makers of the brand, that advertise themselves as anti-establishment or anti-corporate or what have you, have sold out. It's not that I'm saying that anytime they say something that I don't like, that shows that they've sold out. I think that if you are any kind of connoisseur of the arts, shall we say, then you have some kind of latitude. You extend some kind of latitude to artists and authors and makers of whatever kind of art it is that you are taking in, whether it's cinema or music or literature or whatever. You give them some latitude. You say, all right, I think they're way off the mark in this way. I think they're way off the mark in this way, and so forth. But at the same time, that they are independent thinkers. They're not being shaped by some entity, some more powerful entity that is pulling their strings in some way. And I think that this can be said about a lot of authors, musicians, and artists, directors, various kinds, that they may have been off the mark in a lot of ways, but they weren't controlled. And that, I think, is the crucial distinction to make. Now, I've watched South Park on and on. I mean, off and on. I watched them pretty consistently for, I think, a good amount of time. Maybe from the late 90s up until, the beginning of the 10s, I guess. And then I maybe dropped off after that, because it seemed to me that they had just, maybe it was partly just that they had been around for a little too long, and just like with The Simpsons and Family Guy, like I talked about the other day, why are these shows still around? Why do they keep making more? The thing has run its course. I mean, there are only so many takes on the subject that these shows are portraying. There's only so many. I mean, you can only go so far until you've pretty much exhausted things, and it's time to end, to bring it to an end and move on to the next thing. And they don't do that. They keep going. And that in itself, I think there's something maybe a little suspicious about that. Of course, when a product is well known and entrenched, it's a money maker, and so maybe they're just around for that, mundane kind of reason. to make more money for themselves and to make more money for their advertisers. I mean, I'm aware that that's part of how things work, but that's not the entirety of how things work, as I'm sure most of you who are watching this probably are aware. So in the time that I watched South Park, there were plenty of times where they did things that I didn't approve of. Their mocking attitude towards Christianity, towards Catholicism in general, their blasphemous portrayal of Jesus in the Jesus and Pals segment, and other places like, I was not down with any of that, but I didn't think at the time that they were doing those things because someone was pulling their strings and telling them to do those things. I thought they were just being their naughty selves, and that again goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago. You have to extend artists some latitude, and you have to be a little bit more, you have to be, or I think anyway, you have to be open to liking, to appreciating what what is done in various forms of art without necessarily having to believe that they are dead on the money in every way. And again, what I never got the feeling with those episodes where they were being blasphemous or mocking or insulting of Catholicism, I never got the feeling that they were doing someone's bidding or having their strings pulled in a particular way. I just thought, again, it was just it was from the heart, which doesn't justify it in my mind, but it still makes it qualitatively different from what I think they've been doing lately and what they've done with the pandemic, the so-called pandemic, the pandemic episode, and now with the vaccine or the vaccination episode, or the vaccination special, where it seems like they've been just repeating the talking points of what you hear on CNN, in a slightly more irreverent way, in a slightly more tolerable way. But the whole spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down notion, or helps the vaccine go down in this case, which is just I think much more of an issue, much more of a red flag, much more of a major disappointment, than just saying, having an episode or two where they are wide of the mark, or off the mark on this, that, or the other thing, because there's an infinity of difference between being wrong but independent and being controlled, and that's what I think is what I'm trying to point to here. Now, somebody asked an interesting question on my last video, which is what was my take on George Carlin. And I don't know George Carlin's career all that well. I know that near the end of his life, he seemed to be pretty red-pilled in a way. I don't want to give him too much credit, but the whole thing about, it's a club and you ain't in it, that whole rant, that seems pretty, that seems like something that would be called conspiracy thinking or conspiracy theorizing these days, and would get, in our ever more censorious age, would probably get pushed to the margins much more than it was when he actually delivered those words. With George Carlin, though, I remember seeing his stand-up comedy in the 80s and Some of it was funny, but a lot of it was just kind of mediocre and, kind of just vulgar for vulgarity's sake. And a lot of it was, making fun of religious people and anti-abortionists and just, taking a lot of the same kind of, a lot of the pot shots that, the sneering elites would laugh and clap along to. So maybe he, but at the same time, maybe there was with him too, there was some kind of independent streak, and somewhere along the way, it became more and more clear to him what was the way things really were, because, by the end of his life, or by near the end of his life, when he started to talk about it's a club and you ain't in it kind of a perspective, then he seemed to be, not just whistling Dixie anymore. So maybe, and I'm saying this not as somebody who knows Carlin all that well, but maybe his trajectory is the very reverse of the South Park creator's trajectory. Maybe he came to be a little bit more aware and a little bit less controlled by the time it was all over. Whereas with the South Park guys, with Trey and Matt, it seems that they maybe started off with an independent spirit and now they're controlled. I mean, I remember even back in the Bush v. Gore days, they were willing to mock the anti-Bush people. They were willing to mock the people who were throwing fits that Gore lost. They weren't willing to do that same kind of thing with the anti-Trump people, were they? And that's 16 years later. So that in itself seems to say a lot. That in itself seems to point to something. Either it shows that it shows the trajectory of them growing more controlled, or maybe it also shows up the fact that the Bush thing, the Bush op was much more manufactured than the Trump op was. Although I still think that the Trump brand is also highly suspect in a lot of ways. And I've said that before. So anyway, just wanted to clarify that. Just some thoughts, because I know there might be people out there just saying, oh, well, you just think they're controlled because you disagree with them. And no, there's a crucial distinction to be made between disliking someone because or disliking what someone has said about an issue while still thinking that they are speaking from the heart and speaking in an independent way, and feeling like they are just a corporate brand that's getting their strings pulled and being told what to say, and basically ventriloquist dummies for the elites, which is unfortunately what it seems they have become. So those are my thoughts. Those are my further thoughts on South Park. Let me know what you think. My name's Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com.